Welcome to the Town of Garner regular meeting on March the 18th. The council's here, our citizens are here, and it's a beautiful night in Garner. If it's not a spectacular day today, I don't know what you're waiting for. Glad y'all are here. Let's start out by calling the roll so we can officially launch this meeting. I've called on our town clerk.
Mayor Gupton?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vance?
Here.
Councilmember Dellinger?
Here.
Councilmember Matthews?
Here.
Councilmember Behringer?
Here.
And Councilmember Singleton.
Here.
Thank you. And we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance and an invocation, both led by me. If you would stand up, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I mentioned in the past, back in the third grade, I had a teacher named Miss Bass, and every day she had the thought for the day. She didn't pray, she didn't have an official invocation. This was even before the separation of church and state and all that stuff, but she had the thought for the day. And this is one that she told us then, and it's one that I've heard recently, even this week, I think, maybe from one of my coworkers here. But it's worth repeating, even though you've heard it 100 times, and you've heard the same message 1,000 different ways. But Miss Bass attributed this to Eleanor Roosevelt, who I think she was in elementary school with Eleanor, or she might have been Eleanor's teacher, I'm not sure. They both went way back. But Eleanor Roosevelt told us that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, that's why we call it the present. So never forget you're living in the moment here. Don't live every day like it's your last, or it will be. It could be your last. But find that balance. Stay in the present. Stop and smell the roses. Look at the people, loved ones around you, and make sure you're enjoying every day, every person just as much as you can. With that being said, we'll move along to petitions and comments, and I'll ask our town attorney, has anyone signed up to speak at this part?
No one has signed up this evening.
Okay. Well, we'll move right along to adoption of the agenda. Our council members have had a chance to look this over and think about it. Does it look like we're on the right track here with the agenda? Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Matthews, second by Ms. Behringer. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, on my little cheat sheet here, it said no presentations, but there is one that dawned on me that's worth repeating again, and you've probably heard about this already. But there is a North Carolina Main Street organization, and we've long been a member of it. They help us figure out how to improve our downtown, steps we can take, learning from others. They had a big conference last week, a statewide conference. 4 or 5 of our team went, I think, that were down there. And much to our pride, we saw that one of our hardworking council members here, who has extensive background in our Main Street and our DGA Association, Downtown Garner Association, was awarded a North Carolina Main Street Champion Award. And he even got a medal with the ribbon, but somehow he forgot to bring it this evening because I wanted to have the band play, maybe some fireworks, the usual celebration. But it's a real serious award. It was hard earned over years and years of being a contributor. This is a guy who's really committed to downtown, has worked with all the people there and continues to. And that was Damian Dellinger. I want to give him a big round of applause. Thank you. He promised to bring the medal next time. Yes. So we can see it. So thank you again, Damian. Okay, we move along to the consent agenda, and this is a very long one. If any of you have looked at it, there's a lot of items on there. Most of these are fairly routine in nature. All of them have been reviewed by staff and reviewed by council. There's a number of them on there this evening. And unless there's some motion to pull one of these items off for more intensive review, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Vance and seconded by Ms. Behringer. All in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, it's unanimous. We've accepted the consent agenda, and we took care of about 15 issues all at one time. Thanks for doing your homework earlier and looking at these. That really facilitated this. We get to Part H of the agenda. It says public hearings. There are no public hearings on the agenda, a little bit unusual, but we do have some interesting new and old business. The first one that we have this evening is a Tier 1 conditional rezoning for a project called Exchange at 401 Commercial. Our presenter this evening is our Assistant Planning Director, Aaron Joseph. If you would come up and give us a little background and the history of what we're looking at here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Okay, so I will present case CZ 24-003, also known as 401 Exchange Commercial. This is a Tier 1 conditional rezoning request submitted by Beth Blackman on behalf of the Timmons Group. It encompasses 8.32 acres, requesting to rezone from residential 4 R4-C11-PRD conditional to commercial mixed use. The site is located along 7509 Fayetteville Road. The applicant has offered conditions and proposed conditions and a constrained list of permitted uses. And again, this is a Tier 1 rezoning request, so it does not include a site-specific master plan. Again, the current zoning is residential 4, R4-C11-PRD. It's currently vacant. In September of 2020, the exchange at 401 planned residential development was approved, and so that's how it was rezoned during that planned residential development. North of the site and on the south boundaries, the zoning is RA. And then you have behind, on the rear to the site, the exchange at 401 with the R4-C11 PRD zoning district. The site also falls within the commercial highway overlay district. And what that really means is that development within this overlay district is subject to specific standards that are above the regular standards of the UDO to ensure compatibility with neighboring uses. So those standards include development such as maximum area of outdoor storage and display, design standards that include building height maximums, and then additional landscaping, buffer protection, and additional screening requirements. It also limits certain uses that would normally be within the base district, would be prohibited within the commercial highway overlay district or overlays district. And just briefly, the site is located within 2 activity centers and frameworks. They have the neighborhood, and just a small portion, I'll just highlight there, is within the community activity center. The last traffic count from NC.DOT has the average annual daily trips at 34,690. Again, the applicant is requesting commercial mixed use. They have narrowed the uses down to 32 out of a possible 62 in the permitted use table in the UDO. And they also have proffered 9 written conditions outside of the permitted uses. It's been a while since you've seen this. I believe the public hearing was in December. So I can briefly go through some of the uses. They really are proffering site design, which includes an outdoor gathering space of at least 1,000 square feet. And within that space, they are committing to 3 benches and a minimum of 500 square foot of a flower bed containing 50% pollinator-friendly plants. They also are committing to 55% of the primary building materials shall be brick, stone, or decorative scored concrete masonry. All building and suite entrances shall be covered by awnings, colonnades, or canopies with a minimum of a 5x5 area, or entrances shall be covered under walkways adjacent to the primary facade. They have included 2 pet waste stations that will be evenly distributed throughout the interior sidewalks. 75% of landscaping shall be native and adapted species. They will use only warm season grass. They are committing to dedicating a transit easement measuring 15 by 20 feet along the property's Fayetteville road frontage. And interior sidewalks will connect the gathering space and buildings, linking the public pedestrian sidewalks to the Exchange at 401 subdivision. And the property owner will also ensure the ongoing maintenance of all exterior areas, including but not limited to the gathering space, pet waste stations, sidewalks, parking lots, and landscaping. And just to draw your attention to the maps on the screen, this is from our comprehensive land use plan. The land character type is retail centers, and the development intensity is a level 3, tier 3 area to enhance. As staff reviewed this request with our comprehensive plan, we've determined that they have a strong level of consistency with the plan's framework, and so staff does support an overall finding of consistency. During the Planning Commission meeting, there were 2, one in January 13th and then February 10th. Now, there were 2 Planning Commission meetings because at the January 13th meeting, the Planning Commissioners wanted to allow time for the applicant to consider further reducing the uses, and that's why we do have the 32 uses today, because they did commit to removing the convenience store with fuel sales. And that was a part of the discussion during the January 13th meeting. There was also appreciation given for the crosswalks and the commitment to the gathering spaces. There were questions regarding connectivity with the 401 Exchange subdivision. There was a clarifying question regarding the warm season grass, and a comment referencing the neighborhood activity center and uses that would complement and better align with the residential neighborhood. Questions if the parcels included would be that are subdivided, the 2 parcels within this request, if they would be recombined, and also a comment on considering a mid-block crossing. And ultimately, the Planning Commission moved to recommend approval with a 6-1 vote. This evening, the reasonableness is considered. There are 6 criteria that are spelled out for you. I won't go through all of them. And the next steps would be your decision this evening. Staff has prepared draft motions that are within your agenda packet. And the applicant is here this evening to answer any questions. They do not have a formal presentation, but I will also be on standby if you have any questions for staff.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Joseph.
Thank you.
Very informative. Stand by, we may have a question or 2. You're handy there with the maps and everything.
Yes, sir. Thank
And
you.
likewise, our applicant is here and able to answer any questions that might come up. This one, as Ms. Joseph pointed out, had come by council for a public hearing, went to the Planning Commission where it was continued, so they had 2 opportunities there for public hearing. I think there's been a lot of work between our staff and the applicant to come up with something that suits the neighborhood, suits the long-range plan. That's the question that's before you this evening, is whether to approve this final ordinance and make this change. That being said, let's recognize council members who might wish to ask questions. Let's start with Mr. Matthews, see if there's questions or comments for the applicant or our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Presentation, I have no issues with it. It was a good presentation, and we've seen all this before, and I'm glad you worked out everything with the Planning Commission, and that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton.
I agree. I agree with Mr. Matthews.
Okay, Ms. Behringer.
I do as well.
Okay, Mr. Dellinger.
A comment. I had to write it down, so it was a lot of words. Basically, I see this rezoning as the long tail of a past mistake in our evaluation of our comprehensive plan, and now is the best we can get out of this property. And it's this piecemeal rezoning that we've done that won't get us the kind of mixed-use development we see across Wake County, along and near high-volume thoroughfares that have the high property values and amenities that will make us competitive and fiscally sound. So when this came through the first time in 2020, same corridor, same plan for 540, all the plans were the same. Rezoned the whole thing residential, no commercial, whereas it could have been something more well thought out and comprehensive in terms of integrated mixed use. And I say it just because as we consider other projects for rezoning in the future, we need to make sure we're getting a more comprehensive and integrated plan, particularly along our high volume corridors, 70, 540. So I'm going to vote no, because I don't want us to set this precedent, even in our own minds, that is acceptable to come in and piecemeal do large scale development in the town, when we see in other parts of Wake County, it is entirely possible to develop in a more comprehensive way and in a way that creates higher valued property for our tax base. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vance.
No comments. Good.
Okay. Okay, let's take one more quick see. Any other council members have any other observations or questions for staff or the applicant? Well, Mr. Dellinger, I appreciate your input on that, and you're right. We do continue to struggle to find the right balance between long-range planning and what the market will bear and what fits. It is our duty to continue to look at every single one that comes by with exactly that comprehensive approach and that long-term approach. And we do recognize some that the market drives, and there's other ones when our philosophy drives. So thank you for your astute and your commitment to that kind of plan. We need to keep that in mind. Long-term financial sustainability. We have to build projects, whether they're commercial or residential, anything, that will be paying their own way plus some. If we want to keep adding park property, open property, improving our sidewalks, improving our streets, which we haven't had to spend a whole lot on our streets, but it sounds like federal and state DOT may be slowing down a little bit on their contributions to these. We need to be prepared to do all of these things, and it comes from approving and implementing revenue positive projects. So thanks for your attention to that detail. That being said, I think I'll go ahead and see if there's a motion afoot related to this ordinance.
I move that the town council accept the planning commission's written statement regarding consistency of the zoning amendment request with adopted land use plans detailed in section 3 of staff report as our own. And I further move that the town council adopt ordinance number 2025-5321, approving rezoning CZ-24-003 as the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the subject property would be more suitable for the uses permitted by the proposed district versus the current district.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Vance, a second by Mr. Matthews. And with that, since we do have a little difference of opinion, let's get it on the record clearly by having a roll call vote. We'll start with Mr. Vance that made the motion. Aye or nay, sir? Mr. Vance, would that be an aye from you?
Yes,
Okay.
aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Dellinger,
No.
Ms. Behringer,
Aye.
Mr. Singleton,
No.
Mr. Matthews.
Aye.
Okay, that sounds like 3-2. This ordinance passes, it's approved as presented. Thank you very much. Moving right along to item number 2 under new and old business, and this is nuisance ordinance amendments. And this is so complicated and so important that we're bringing in not only our town attorney to make the presentation, but our inspections director, Paul Paget, as well. They hope that between the two of them, they can tag team this delicate but extremely important issue, and also lay the groundwork for a continuing review of our ordinances over the coming months and months as we go back and clean up things that have been on the books for a long time. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of council. Chapter 6, our nuisance ordinance, is the first ordinance that we'll be presenting to you under the code revision project. So I'm going to go over a little bit about that, and then Mr. Paget will go over some of the code compliance work that his department does. So just to summarize, some of the mostly procedural changes, adding definitions, and I can walk you through these if you'd like, but just to back up, this would have been presented to you at the work session, but we wanted to balance out the agenda, and since this was a lighter agenda, we moved this forward. But we're giving you this, the proposed amendments, and then at a subsequent meeting, we will ask that council act on the proposed amendments. So there's just, this slide just summarizes, mostly, again, it's procedural or process changes. There are a few substantive changes, which the main ones are reducing the weed height from 12 inches to 10 inches, but also increasing other vegetation and yard waste height from 8 to 10 inches. And this helps our code compliance officers, as well as other inspectors who are cross-trained to do this, to have one standard for all of the vegetation. We also are adding a section to address swimming pools and ponds. The General Assembly has given direct authority for councils to remove nuisance swimming pools that are a danger to the community. But what we found is that there's a lack of maintenance that creates mosquito breeding grounds, which is a harm to the neighbors. And so this section codifies what our code compliance staff have been doing, where they've been treating these pools with insecticides so that we are abating the nuisance. But we wanted to make sure that that's in our ordinance to also be able to collect the cost of that should this become more of an issue. Again, this happens when people are generally not maintaining their swimming pools. Either they have broken filters or it's a vacant property that's not completely covered. And then the other, along with the height of the weeds, is making sure that we codify what I've worked with staff to do to deal with gardens, no-mow, and pollinator areas. So to make sure that these areas have signage and are somehow demarked with landscaping pavers or fencing so that it's clear that these are intentional areas and not from, again, a lack of maintenance or mowing of the property. We had a couple of questions come up about if you've heard about the No Mow May initiatives, and we met with NC State's Extension Service to talk about what are the appropriate kind of parameters about that if you do indeed want to have a pollinator habitat in your yard. So we believe that we have a good proposal for that. So if you want me to walk through any specific changes, as with all of our ordinances, new language is underlined, and existing language that we'd like to take out have strike-throughs through them. One of the pieces of direction that I need this evening is for council to decide whether the nuisance ordinance should be an ordinance that is able to be punished as a criminal misdemeanor. As you'll see in the comment, a couple of years ago, the General Assembly added a defense to town ordinances that are punishable as misdemeanors. And basically, there's now a defense if there's good faith efforts to seek assistance to address any underlying factors related to unemployment, homelessness, mental health, or substance abuse. As a result of this defense, many district attorneys are not as aggressive in enforcing code violations. And I've talked to the inspections department. My recommendation would be to decriminalize this ordinance and to just deal with it through abatement and civil penalties if necessary. I don't believe we've had the kind of egregious sort of non-compliance with nuisance conditions that would warrant having that tool in our toolbox. The fact that under nuisance we can summarily abate these and go out and then charge the cost back to the property seems to be incentive enough for most people to comply with the ordinance. So there's a few references that I highlighted in yellow to where there's a reference to it being enforced as a misdemeanor. So I'm looking for council's direction on that issue.
Okay, so there's a specific question to council you'd like some comment on related to. I think earlier you said decriminalizing some of these nuisance violations. Is that correct?
Right. There was a couple years ago, we had to go through an exercise to decriminalize and readopt any ordinance that had a criminal penalty associated with it. At that time, in meeting with department heads and the police chief, this ordinance was left alone, thinking that there might be an egregious situation that would be warranted. But in further reflection, I don't believe that's the case with what I've experienced here in Garner in the last 4 years. And then subsequent to that decriminalization exercise, this added defense was added that has made criminal enforcement of local ordinances less likely to occur.
And again, our history has been that the abatement and then charging that abatement back to the property seems to have accomplished the goal on the vast majority of our cases here.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah, we might let Mr. Padgett address this. He's the guy out there on the front lines trying to determine how to deal with the mosquito-infested pools, the overgrown yards. If you'd like to comment on this, sir, that would be appreciated.
And vultures.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So over the past few years, we get one or two pools that we've got to address where they're either the owners can't maintain them or it is vacant property. So we go through, we throw mosquito dunks in it. We've had a couple where we had to drain them. Yeah, we've had one or two we've had to drain, or the or tenants there will drain them. But I've got a few portion of items that will cover like what we do with the nuisance ordinance, if that's okay if we keep going. May answer some of the questions.
Okay, questions, comments from council?
Yeah.
Do we want to deal with hers first?
Well, it's kind of part of the same review. I guess what we're really looking at here, this is the way we will be reviewing some of our ordinances going forward. There's quite a book full of them, I understand. And our staff is looking at them in detail with our attorney's advice and in light of the latest state statutes that govern these same things to make sure we're in compliance and that we're in compliance with common sense and reasonable enforcement to accomplish our goal. At this point, we do not have to approve these changes this evening. We can look at them, ask questions, and the consensus of council could be to add this to our consent agenda for next time to being voted on these things. But in the meantime, it's a good chance to ask questions. about not just these specific issues, these particular nuisances of weeds and pools, but the way that we'll be addressing a large number of ordinances over the coming months. There'll be a review by staff, by the people in charge of enforcing these ordinances, and by our attorney. And they'll be making these, bring them to us kind of in this draft form. And typically, they'll probably end up on a consent agenda if there's no particular questions. Is that an accurate way to describe this, Ms. Jones?
No, I believe, and we have a little bit more of the presentation, but on this particular issue, some ordinances will require a public hearing and some, like this one, will not. My recommendation would be that we provide a public hearing for all of them, so it's a consistent process for the public. So there's not confusion between why is this one particularly required a public hearing and I don't get to speak at something else, but it would provide for more consistency to have it all of the ordinance changes to be presented at a work session and then have a public hearing. Now, at that most of the time, it could be adopted at the public hearing if there are no changes or no additional things that need to be looked into.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. That was what we had talked about earlier, that even though we don't have to have a public hearing on this particular one, our format would be to present the information to council, have it available to be a public hearing. So this one would be a future public hearing on this particular one. So we can hear all sides of it if we haven't answered all of our questions. Okay. Mr. Paget, is that kind of in line with your thoughts?
Yes. So code compliance is covered or enforced, or compliance is verified through a group within the inspection department. Here's just a few statistics from 2019 till now. We did bring Nathan on board in 2021, and you'll see the numbers kind of jump up. So prior to that, we were a complaint-driven group on that code compliance side. After bringing Nathan on board, we're more proactive, so you'll see the numbers go up. And then in 24, you'll see them kind of drop down again for grass and yard waste. During that time, we actually worked with town communications, and they started creating some handouts in regards to getting more information out to the public about what is a nuisance. So with the public education side of that, we would like to kind of say that work helped those numbers come down. Here's some examples of the teamwork to create the Town of Garner Code Compliance Top 4 list. That's actually in English and Spanish, and we try to keep those supplied at all of the town buildings. And then our door hangers that we use. So if we respond to a complaint, or if they're driving by and they see something, they fill that out and they leave it on the resident's door. That gives an opportunity for them to actually give our folks a call prior to us sending out an NOV, or a notice of violation. The process currently is complaint, or if they see it in the field, to respond to that within 24 hours. They'll conduct an inspection to verify the violation. If there is a violation, the NOV is mailed next business day. Then it gives them 10 days to respond or comply to that notice of violation. Extensions may be given if requested. If no response or compliance is received within 10 days, we pass it on for an abatement, and that abatement could take a couple days to occur. So either through compliance or abatement, all of our nuisance violations are getting corrected. So that's why we support taking that criminal part out of it. That's also kind of the reason we're going for the 10-inch mark, is to keep everything as 10 inches, 10 days. And then there's some other ones that we're looking at in the future to add 10 to for some guidance. This is a link to a video that we worked with communications on. Got it.
population groups. Please help assist with maintaining community pride and helping us continue to make Garner a great place to be.
And then we did work with communications again for an additional video to go out, and it got posted today on Facebook or on all of our stuff. Yeah, on Facebook and Instagram in regards to nuisance. We do ask for community involvement. Quite a few of these are complaint driven. So just to kind of remind folks, if they see anything, they can use the Garner Info app, or they can just email our code compliance folks directly at nov@GarnerNC.gov. And then here's some examples of some of the violations that staff has worked. The next steps.
So obviously the video that Kyle had produced last year, if these amendments were adopted, he would go in and update that to the 10-inch mark. But right now, the next step, if you want any additional amendments, the question about decriminalizing the nuisance ordinance, and then I think we would recommend holding a public hearing on the April 15th agenda, just because the April 1st agenda already has a lot of public hearings slated for that one.
That's a lot of good information. Questions, feedback from council, your first impressions of what we're talking about here.
Well, I agree with the decriminalization of the nuisance ordinance, and it appears that we're moving in the right direction when with the public hearing. Has that been scheduled yet? Or is it you're just waiting for us to give response before a public hearing is scheduled?
Yes.
Okay.
So if there's consensus for decriminalizing and then to hold a public hearing, we would get that on the, we would make the necessary revisions and get that on.
Okay. All right. So I'm in line with what is being proposed and recommended.
Ms. Behringer, questions, comments?
No, I'm agree with the decriminalization and placing it in public hearing on April 15th.
Mr. Singleton, comments, questions?
Question about the addition to pools and ponds. A pond is defined as a body of water on the property. I'm just curious. I know we all think what a pond is, but somebody can take that and argue with you and say that's not a pond.
Yeah, I think it's meant for your decorative installed,
Yeah, like landscaping.
right, your small goldfish pond or something that, you can buy a pre-kit for, as opposed to a farm pond or a stormwater management pond. I mean, there are other regulations that could address those as well if they became a mosquito breeding ground.
We had one years ago on Weston Road. And it was just, the top was just green. You could have, tell them how thick it was. It took a lot of effort, but Attorney Anderson, we finally got them to fill it in. But it was just, it wasn't used or anything. It was just, it was unattractive and it wasn't safe. No fence or anything around it. So that's why I'm asking. There's a pond right up here. So, that pond could be in violation if they didn't. I know they have, I know there's a pond maintenance company that looks after that pond. So, but I'm just curious, we're into ponds, just making sure that it's more than just the decorative fish ponds. It is pond on a property.
And stormwater management devices that are not under current regulations, we have left that in the ordinance because there are some situations where they're not maintained and they need to be maintained, or they could become a hazard in that situation as well. But I was thinking your larger ponds tend to have fish and different diversity, frogs and things that keep it from being overwhelmingly a nuisance mosquito habitat.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
And I'll give you a thumbs up on the other also. I'm fascinated that sheet you had about 4 back had junk car categories, and I just had a question. Can you pull that up, if you don't mind? Oh, yeah, there you go. That's fascinating data. But I was looking at 2025 and junk vehicles. Is this just 2.5 months into it, and we're at 88 already?
It's just a projected, they took where we were and then averaged that and then,
Oh, okay. I was just thinking, we're gonna have a lot of junk cars at that rate.
yeah, they've
88
been
to
busy with
2.5
that this
months.
year.
I'm saying, great job.
Well, and again, is this on the calendar year or the budget year?
Our calendar year.
Okay. All right, thanks.
But interesting numbers there, but I think, are we seeing that as gonna be one of the bigger things in the big scheme of things, junk cars and people working on it? I can ride around, I think we all have, and seen 2 or 3 cars in the backyard and hoods up, and you notice no tags on it. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so Ms. Jones, I believe the question before us is, do we want to go ahead and take your recommendations here, staff's recommendations, and hold a public hearing on this particular set of ordinance amendments to be held either April 1st or April 15th agenda?
I think I would recommend the 15th agenda, just to give time both to make sure we have the final version of the ordinance and to allow the public some time to consider these amendments as well.
Yes, good. So you don't need a vote, you just need kind of the feeling of consensus, and I think that's what I'm hearing, to go ahead with the plans that you have in place. I think it's a good format that each group of ordinance amendments that come in will go through a public hearing. People have a chance to speak and hear about each one, and then approve them in groups of ordinances going forward.
And the webpage that we've put together, where people can send in their written comments or get alerts, we've gotten some feedback on that. We just didn't get any comments on the nuisance ordinance at this time.
Excellent. We're kind of inventing the process as we go here, where we
Right.
have a lot of catch-up work from decades perhaps of getting everything into compliance with current state law and what's practical and what's doable. Excellent. Well, my hat is off to you and Paul, Nathan, and Lou, the group who are out there on the front lines. And it's amazing how few complaints we have from the alleged offenders. You know, the neighbors appreciate you getting on top of these nuisances, but the people who are on the property, they are not saying you're being unfair or harsh, anything less than reasonable and cooperative. You're out there to help them solve these problems instead of put them in handcuffs and drag them away. So they notice that and they appreciate that. We all appreciate it. Every little junk car, every little overgrown lawn, every below par property that we have is a mark against us. And they're more visible to newcomers than they are to us. We get used to seeing this. So thank you very much for what you do. Stay the course, and we'll work with you as we work through these ordinances and figure out how to keep Garner a great place to be. Okay. With no other questions, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much. And item number 3 on the old and new business is the ETJ expansion request and an update on that. Boy, this thing has got more news than we ever dreamed 3 letters in an initial could come up with. This has really gone viral, you might say. And so it's gone so viral, we have several people it's going to take to explain it to us. We're going to start with our Assistant Town Manager, John Hodges, who's been the front line on this, or with Ms. Miller, our Town Manager, is going to set the stage for the other presenters.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. Good evening. We've had a lot of activity regarding the town's ETJ expansion request with Wake County, and so I wanted to provide council an update of what's going on at the state level, but also at the county level. I've asked Mr. Hodges to provide an update, and we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers from council, and then we have a recommendation on a next step. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hodges.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Ms. Miller said, we thought it was an appropriate time to provide an update to council on the ETJ expansion request and provide a recommendation for next steps. As I think council is aware, House Bill 173 has been filed and has passed the first of 3 committees in the House. Town staff was on hand for the committee meeting, shared perspectives on behalf of the town. They did move out of that committee, and we're waiting for it to be scheduled for the next House committee. We had heard at the Wake County Planning Board meeting on the meetings that they had with the subcommittee, and also at the March 5th meeting, There was continued concerns from property owners in the request area. We know that there's been some there has been some carve-outs made for agricultural lands as a part of the proposal from county staff, but even with those, there's still some concerns about agricultural lands and how those are be treated. There have been some signs and and a website created for folks that are against the ETJ expansion. You may have seen some of that. There's also been a number of people that are in the Panther Branch community that have expressed concern to the Wake Planning Board that they're opposed to the expansion, and also some comments from them about seeking their own type of jurisdiction or leadership within the Panther Branch community. So just wanted to pass that along to you as well. The Wake County Planning Board did hear this at their March 5th meeting, as I said, and after a couple of hours of comment and discussion, they did see a path forward, but it was a path forward that would be recommended in our northeast and northwest areas, but it would remove all of the southwest area of the expansion request, and that's the area that largely follows along the 540 corridor. The next step would be to refer that to the Wake County Commissioners at a work session. But at this time, county and town staff are concerned about moving that forward in the process with there being differing recommendations and pending state legislation. So I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions about any of that information that I shared with you.
No questions.
All right, seeing none, we move ahead and provide our recommendation that staff is recommending that we pause the ETJ expansion request until the outcome of House Bill 173 is known and additional conversations can be had at the county level. And Ms. Miller and I will be glad to answer any questions.
We're not being asked to make any decision tonight as to whether, how, or if we want to modify our request. The main question before us is it okay for staff to hit pause on this project for a few weeks or even a couple of months while the state legislature and the Wake Planning Commission and the county commissioners sort through these things? And then we can listen more to their input, work within existing guidelines. We're kind of looking at, should we hit pause? That's the question for. And we have a question or comment from Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we put this on pause, which what you're recommending, if this thing never makes it out of the committee to the floor for a vote, I guess my question is it going to die in committee, and we back up and punt and come back at it again or a little bit later? What's the up and down side on this, just to make sure I understand it?
Yeah. Mr. Matthews, reason for pausing it is just to see kind of where the state legislation is going to go. In addition to that, as Mr. Hodges mentioned, the southern portion of our request, which is sort of on that 540 corridor, was not recommended by the planning board as well. So the pause would really help us see, one, the outcome of the state legislation to be able to tell what, if we should pursue this, if it does fail. And then pausing it would also allow us to have continued work and conversations both with the planning staff and with the Board of Commissioners regarding the opportunities with our request as it was presented to them as compared to what was recommended by the planning board. So taking both into consideration, it just made sense to pause this. I would say we probably would pause it and review it again sometime this summer when we have a little bit more information to better know what a next step should look like.
I would agree with that, because just getting a small amount of it kind of defeats the purpose. And with that southern loop, especially all those key intersections with potential commercial development, and we want to do it right. And I've had more phone calls and people asking me about this ETJ, and I'm telling them, truly, it's nothing to worry about. Nobody's going to annex you in. Nobody's going to raise your taxes. None of the above. I said, it's just, if things happen, it gives us a chance to make sure we've got good quality development, especially on the commercial side around that southern loop down that way. And nobody's trying to outdo anybody. But having said that, I would agree on, Mr. Mayor, on the pause. And let's see what happens at the legislative, because it could die there and go into a further period. Then we back up and punt and maybe go at it from another angle, like you said, and talk to people and clear up some of the questions that's out there. And so, Mr. Mayor, I'm okay with the pausing on that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments?
I just have one question. I seem to remember that when this issue came up initially, that the proposal was to, I think the representative from Fuquay, the proposal was to pause expansion for 3 years. Is that gone now, and this is something separate, or is it part of the whole?
No, so House Bill 173 that I mentioned is the proposal that Representative Paré has made to the House.
Okay.
That is the bill that's proposed to pause all ETJ in Wake County for a period of 3 years.
3 years, okay.
So that is what is still active. That is what is moving through committee, and we don't yet know the outcome of that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So it's
There
kind
was
of,
another bill, a statewide bill, to basically eliminate ETJ wherever the county has zoning. So it would apply to Wake County as well. That was just filed yesterday or today.
Say that again now.
Yeah, say that again.
Ms. Miller sent you an email of the bill, but another bill was filed that would have statewide application and basically eliminate ETJ outside of the town limits in any county that has zoning. So Wake County has zoning, so therefore it would impact the town. So we're going to continue to monitor any other bills that might impact the ETJ, particularly expansions, as they move through committee. But crossover is May 8th, so we'll have a better idea of bills that make it, out of one chamber of the House or the Senate.
yes, I guess another comment to make here, Wake County is in charge of the areas outside of the city limits, okay, and outside of our existing ETJ. That's their call throughout the county. And not only is the legislature thinking about pausing for 3 years the expansion of any municipality's ETJ, but Wake County still has the authority to make decisions per each municipality. Can you make this ETJ go to these locations that are now governed by the county? So at the end of the day, I think that almost everybody agrees we need some degree of planning, some degree of control. Every landowner justifiably feels like they don't want to be restricted in what happens with their land. They don't want more government oversight. They don't want more rules and regulations that may impair their ability to do what they want to do. So we're struggling to find that balance. We depend on Wake County Planning Board and Wake County Commissioners to exercise their zoning authority that they have over these no man's land, no municipality's land. So they do have the authority to do some planning, to do some zoning, to require more than the minimum farm or more than the minimum subdivision. They can make direction toward a denser, more high level, more property value kind of property. Am I summarizing this correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's what's going on. A lot of forces at work. But we don't want to abandon the idea that no government in Wake County will ever be able to do any planning or any zoning, because if it's not the municipality, it will be Wake County. And I have some confidence in Wake County's Planning Commission and Wake County Commissioners that they want to do what's best for the county, best for the citizens, best for the municipalities. So a lot of overlapping jurisdictions, a lot of fingers in this pie, including now the state government. So let's just take a deep breath and see where this is going, and then see what step we need to take there to move ahead in a positive way with our neighbors.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would just add one thing to the statement that you made about, or statements you made about Wake County. They do have zoning in the county area, but their zoning densities are going to always be limited to things that can be served without the extension of public utilities. So I think it is important for council to understand that while there is zoning in the county, you would likely not see the types of densities that we have envisioned through our Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan at some of the key interchange areas. And speaking of utility extensions, that is one of the points that were made by Planning Board and questions that were asked about the availability of utilities in some of the areas that we're asking for extensions for. And then also some questions about the percentage of our most recent ETA expansion back in 2016-17 and how much of that had been annexed. So I think as we continue during our pause period, if council directs us to move forward in that manner, we will likely have some follow-up discussions with you just about some of those technical things that we heard brought up as concerns by not only residents in the area, but especially things that were brought up as questions and concerns by the Wake Planning Board members.
Right. Other question, comments?
Just a comment. I just want to say that definitely appreciate the work and in-depth research and advocacy that's been done by the staff on the town's behalf to move forward with the council desires. Just want to make that clear that this doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are a lot of moving parts to this particular issue, and I just want to say personally thank you for your efforts.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
And, you know, looking at the packet, there's a lot of information in there. There's also a lot of what look like very upset constituents. And it looks to me like we need to do more outreach as a council. They're not our constituents, right? They won't be our constituents even if we expand their ETJ, but just reviewing the correspondence, the nature of it, and the timing of it, and the contents of it, there seems to be a fair amount of misunderstanding as to what it entails. And I think it is incumbent upon us as elected officials, but some of these people may not know who we are. They not know what our intentions are, or what they may be very surprised what shows up if they're not in our ETJ. A lot of the correspondence seems to indicate, well, this is going to stay this way forever. Well, that is not true. The question is they need to answer is who do they want to have oversight over what goes there? And maybe we need to make changes to our comprehensive plan that are more accommodating. But as an elected official looking at it, I see people who are upset that need more information. They may make the same decision, but they might make it a little less upset. I think we can sit and wait, but I think the nuances of what gets taken away by the Wake County becomes moot to some point if the legislation passes. So we can wait and see what happens. We got everybody's phone number and email on here. We should invite them to something down there and say, come talk to us. Let's have a conversation about what this means as an ETJ expansion. You've got preconceived ideas about who we are as a council and what our intentions are. Let's talk. It might not change their minds, but they clearly have not heard clearly what even ETJ expansion means for them as far as, you hear the word annex over and over again. So I don't think there's any harm in us we can wait for other stuff, but I don't think there's any harm in setting something up and being proactive and sitting and talking with people. Even if it needs to be set up as a public hearing because there are more than 3 of us there, or a public meeting or whatever, I'd like to hear what some of them have to say and that's just me. When people are upset, you gotta listen to them.
No, it's not just you. That's a brilliant observation. Yeah, more communication. We did a lot of outreach. We had a lot of meetings, but it didn't get through to enough people clearly enough. And while we pause, we can certainly do more communication. So that's a point well made. We certainly want to continue to talk with our neighbors, whether they happen to be inside our city limits, whether they happen to be within the existing ETJ, whether they're within the projected future ETJ, or totally outside of that. We want to work with our neighbors. Anything we can be doing while we take this pause to facilitate communication, I think could go a long way. Thank you very much for making that point, Mr. Dellinger. Other observations, comments?
I think that's a great idea. I think, the pause would give us some time to see where it's going to go. And secondly, let's look at some sort of putting together a meeting, an outreach, could be at Panther Branch Clubhouse, somewhere. We just sit down and eyeball and say, let's talk about this. I know when we talked about the fire merger, there were so many different rumors out there that was going on but once people got the truth and found out about it, hey, I'm fine with this. And I think this could be quite similar. Of course, a lot of people got stirred up and 2 or 3 bad lines. They're going to jam your taxes, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I'm thinking, It's not, no such thing. So it's a lack of information. I agree with Mr. Dillinger that let's pause it and let's see about putting together a meeting and invite all these people in and make it a big event where they can come and let's talk, answer questions, and maybe we can move through it.
Excellent. So again, I think you're getting the consensus here. I don't think we have to take a vote. The yes, council does want to follow your recommendation and pause further activity while we gather more information, see where our neighboring governmental bodies go, and give us a chance to communicate with neighbors. So I'm seeing people shaking their head. The pause is okay. We don't have to take a vote. But when it's time for us to take another action, we'll count on you to let us know.
Thank you for the guidance. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'd also like just to take a moment to appreciate the thanks that Mr. Vance shared with staff, and also extend that to our appreciation for the planning team, the planning department. Mr. Triesenberg could not be here tonight, Ms. Joseph and others who've been working behind the scenes, representing us at meetings, doing a lot of the work, doing a lot of these tough conversations. So I just wanted to also take the moment just to thank them for all the work to get us to this point as well.
Yes, and thanks to all our neighbors down there who have not come in here carrying torches and pitchforks. You know, we're glad for their patience and time to get along with this too. All right, we're moving right along in record time. Some very important issues we've been discussing here. At this point, let's move to committee reports from our council members who are reporting on behalf of a particular committee that they're part of. Let's start with Mr. Matthews this time.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Singleton?
Yes, sir.
Well, as usual, I'm happy to report on the Public Arts Committee. The first sculpture is in place, completed, at the corner of Avery Street and West Garner Road. So if you haven't been down there yet to have a look at it, please go by. I think you will really find yourself uplifted by looking at it. And we are working on designated a date to have an unveiling with the sculpture there, for naming the sculpture, and for a few other surprises. So just stay tuned, because this is just beginning.
Well, how are we going to come up with a name? Will there be a contest?
Just wait and see.
The suspense is killing. I think it should be Freebirds. Freebirds.
Just wait and see.
Okay. Well, I spoke out of line. I'm sorry. Mr. Dellinger.
No report.
Mr. Vance.
So yes, the HR committee met today with plans to schedule and review applications for the current vacant positions, and that hopefully recommendations will be coming before the council in a not so distant future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That concludes the committee reports, and we have manager reports and talk of the town. Ms. Miller.
Yes, Mayor, you have your monthly Talk of the Town report in your agenda packet. I'll ask Mr. Hodges to go over some of the highlights and then answer any questions the council may have. Mr. Hodges?
All right, thank you, Ms. Miller. The first one is one that's always important to our council as well as our residents. That is announcing our 2025 spring cleanup. That does begin on Monday, the 24th for some neighborhoods, and we'll work on that through April 7th. As a reminder, this is both our unprepared yard waste and large waste items that can be put out behind the curb, and we ask people to do that no more than a week prior to their scheduled week for regular trash pickup is the way that calendar is organized. Residents should have received a schedule and information about this collection in their calendars and in their February water bill insert. But for anyone who needs additional information, you can find that on our website. It's featured as a highlight item currently. There's also a link in the Talk of the Town in your packet that will get you to the spring cleanup flyer. And you can always email Public Works at publicworksservicedesk@GarnerNC.gov. Wanted to also mention that both of our bond rating agencies, Moody's and S&P, have reissued reaffirmed our bond ratings ahead of our upcoming borrowing. We were ratings reaffirmed at AA1 from Moody's and AAA from S&P. These ratings will allow us to get favorable rates in the upcoming issuance of bonds. And in affirming the town's rating, both agencies noted organizational stability, positive regional growth, and forward-looking management as positive attributes that contributed to the ratings. Ms. Behringer has already updated you on public art that was mentioned in the Talk of the Town. We did want to mention that the Downtown Garner April Foods Day Food Truck Rodeo will be held on Saturday, April the 5th. This is one of the 2 large food truck rodeos that we closed the street off for and have a number of food trucks out and some other vendors. And that is going to be on a Saturday this year from 5 to 9 on Main Street in historic downtown Garner. Also included in Talk of the Town are some parks, recreation, and cultural resources updates. One of those being that the spring summer program guide was mailed to over 13,000 households. Copies are also available at town facilities and at the link provided in your Talk of the Town report. The Performing Arts Center, Garner Performing Arts Center, has a variety of upcoming programs, including the Kruger Brothers and the Rainbow Dance Company. There's a link provided there. You can also go to the town's website to get to the GPAC schedule. Spring Extravaganza, the town's actual annual Easter egg hunt, is scheduled for Saturday, April 12th from 10 to 12 at Lake Benson Park. And additional details about these and all other parks, recreation, and cultural resources events can be found at the town's website, and there's a link provided in your Talk of the Town. At the bottom of the report, you also see some monthly analytics. You got actually a preview from the earlier discussion about some of the compliance issues that we deal with, so you've got some additional information on those tonight. But you can see the numbers here. We're sort of in a lull for some of the types of things ahead of the grass season that was discussed at length earlier tonight. But we appreciate our team, all of our teams who respond to these items, keeping these items managed and maintained on a regular basis. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, back to you, Ms. Miller.
Those are all the reports we have this evening, Council.
Okay, and that brings us to attorney reports.
No report this evening.
Wow. You gave us a lot of good information earlier. Thank you. And back to council members for any other reports not related to your committee. We'll start with Mr. Vance's end down here. Any other items on your agenda, sir?
No, there's not.
Mr. Dellinger?
Yes, I'd just like to comment on the Main Street Conference I went to last week. Ms. Behringer was there, Mary came, Joyce came, and really just take the opportunity to shed light on all the hard work that so many people do downtown. It makes it look easy and clean and fun, and all these events go off without a hitch, from the business owners downtown to Public Works is always doing stuff, and Parks and Rec and Economic Development, and folks who are still here and some who are gone. Just a lot of work by a lot of people goes into making our downtown what it is, and they deserve that acknowledgement as well. So I thank them for all the work they do for our downtown too.
Thank you. Ms. Behringer?
I would like to add to Mr. Dellinger's observations. It was a really good conference. I've gone to them for close to 20 years, and a lot of the information we saw, the breakout sessions, I have seen before, but there's always something new to learn. I read one time that if you're too old to learn something new, you're dead and don't know it. So keep that in mind whenever something seems boring and repetitious. Look for the new. And I'm going to share a funny little thing that one of the speakers said. He was talking about data accuracy and to make sure that you understood how that needs to be taken care of. He said actually only 80% of the data we have are exactly accurate. And his example was that if you pinpointed a spot on Wrightsville Beach and checked the population in the radius, that half of your population would be fish.
Interesting, but not necessarily an accurate
Right.
reflection of what we consider the population.
Right.
Thank you. We do learn things.
We do.
Thank you. Mr. Singleton?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Matthews?
Good to go.
Okay, wow. Well, that concludes our regular business, and I think we have some items that need to be discussed in a closed session. Do we have a motion to move to a closed session?
So moved.
Second.
If I may.
Now let's have the right words to use in this motion.
Citation.
Give us the words and
Would
then
be
we'll
a-
let them move.
Thank you. A closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes, Section 143-318.11A3 to consult with the town attorney regarding litigation, and Section 143-318.11A4 to discuss economic development.
Does your motion, does your movement still stand? That's what
Yes,
you
sir.
meant to
Mine
do.
still
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of moving to a closed session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? We will move to a closed session. We will return here afterwards. Stick around if you like, or if you got a better offer at home, that's okay too. Thank you all for coming. And I would ask our town attorney to give us a little recap of what occurred.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Town council met with staff in closed session to discuss economic development and to consult with the town attorney regarding litigation. Council provided instructions and guidance to staff on the handling of both the economic development issue and pending litigation cases, but no formal action or votes were taken in closed session.
Thank you. Excellent summary, great participation. Our legal team has done their usual superb response to the ongoing litigation. Our economic development team, likewise, on their end of it, unbelievable progress, great results. Thank you very much. If there's no further questions or motions, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Matthews, second by Ms. Behringer. All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Passes unanimously. Meeting adjourned.